I saw a study that said speaking in front of a crowd is considered the #1 fear of the average person. I found that amazing. Number 2 was death. Death is number 2? This means to the average person, if you have to be at a funeral, you would rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy.
If you haven't guessed by now, or if you haven't read the title of this video, today we're going to be talking about fear of public speaking and some ways to handle it. So I need to divulge a little bit of information about myself. Growing up, I didn't really have too many problems speaking in front of an audience, and in college I ended up on a speech and debate team. This meant that I competed nationally in both memorized speeches as well as in the different debate formats, except for policy debate. I still strongly dislike policy debating. Apologies to anybody out there who loves it. And I also helped teach and even led lectures for several years with public speaking classes at the university level. And today I want to go through some of the techniques and tips that I was both given and gave to other people, because I recognize it's a really serious issue. And even me, I've had a lot of experience speaking in public, and I still get really nervous when getting up in front of an audience to speak. And so that's why today I'm talking about it. But first, have you ever wondered why there seems to be a lot of nudity and sex in horror movies? Now, before you think that I'm just going completely off the rails, this is actually connected with, at least according to what I think, why you feel nervous when going up to speak in public. The idea behind this concept is called the two-factor theory of emotion. Namely, it's that there are two parts to an emotion. There is the physiological response, what our body feels, and then the label that we then apply to those feelings. And probably the best way to state this is through the misattribution of arousal. In the study for this theory, the researchers had a group of men. One group was supposed to cross a rope bridge that was intended to heighten their anxiety or fear, and then another group was to go across a normal bridge that was like a solid bridge, wasn't designed in any way to make people afraid to cross it. And at the very end of this bridge, there was an attractive female who would then interview the male respondents after they had crossed the bridge. And there was evidence to show that the men who crossed the bridge that was intended to cause fear and anxiety rated the interviewer as being more attractive than the men who crossed the bridge that was solid, that, didn't cause any fear or anxiety. And so you're probably thinking to yourself right now, what does this have to do with nudity in horror movies and public speaking and the fear thereof? Reason that I bring this up is part of the reason why there is nudity and sex in horror movies is because of the misattribution of arousal. When we see something that gets us physically aroused, and then a horror or a scare scene comes up, we're more likely to attribute our physical response to being afraid rather than the fact that there was something that was physically arousing us. And it's because the arousal and the fear response is very similar, at least physiologically. And so when that happens, we attribute our physiological reaction to the immediate surrounding. So we get prepped for it, and then when the scare comes, we think that we're scared, when in reality, it has more to do with what was right before it. And it's this exact same mix-up between our body's physiological response and our mind that causes our fear or our nervousness at speaking in public. If you've ever competed in a sport or done some sort of physical activity that involved you going out in front of a crowd, you've probably been familiar with that sensation of your adrenaline building up inside of you. It's the fight or flight response. Your body is getting prepped to either fight to save yourself or to run away as fast as you can to avoid danger. When it comes to public speaking, you get that same fight or flight response. But the difference is that there isn't any way for your body to purge the adrenaline from it. You aren't going to be doing some sort of heavy physical activity that you can use to burn out the adrenaline. You're going to be standing up in front of an audience. This is where the two-factor theory of emotion comes in. When you get up to speak in front of an audience, your body is getting prepped for a big activity. You're entering that fight or flight state. However, we don't have a way to be able to burn out the adrenaline that our body is producing like we would if it was a sport. And since we've been told growing up that, public speaking is scary, we attribute those feelings that we have to us being nervous, even though you may not actually be nervous. You just think that you're nervous because of the physiological reactions and the ideas that you've been told about it being scary beforehand. This was the advice that was given to me by my debate coach when I was in college. And honestly, it helped me, because even though I hadn't ever had issues with being too nervous or too scared to speak in front of an audience, there were still the nerves, I could still feel how nervous I was. But the idea that no, I wasn't really that nervous really helped me. So with that said, here are some other tips that I've found helpful. First, practice your speech. I know that with some people, they get nervous thinking about what they're going to be doing, and so they don't practice the speech or really plan ahead of time because they feel like it just increases the nerves. I have found that to be a very bad decision. Even if you're nervous, practicing your speech as much as possible really helps you, because when you get in and you're actually up there speaking in front of people, you're able to fall into a routine of sorts. Practice will help a lot, but it won't get rid of the physiological reaction. One thing that I found that's been really helpful is breathing exercises. I do a triangle where I spend 5 seconds breathing in, and then 5 seconds breathing out, and then another 5 seconds with no breathing. And then I just keep repeating, and I focus on that. That helps stop any hyperventilating or my heart rate increasing, and is what I have found to be quite helpful. Another thing that I have found to be helpful is to not stress over how I'm delivering my speech when I'm up speaking in front of people. If you're too busy focusing on how many ums or ahs or how you're breathing, you're going to be missing what you need to be saying. Chances are people are not going to be paying that much attention to you when you're up speaking. And so the little mistakes that you have, the little stutters or whatever, they're not going to be that noticeable. Rather, you want to make sure that what you are telling people is the important part, not how you're telling it. There is a wide variety of people who have become successful public speakers, like Stephen Hawking. he breaks pretty much all the rules for public speaking. But because of the material that he's talking about, he's able to get it through despite his delivery. With all of that said, keep in mind that a lot of the anxiety or the feeling of being nervous is just your body getting ready for a big event. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually nervous. That's just what you're thinking. And so keep these tips in mind. And make sure that when you go up and talk in front of people, don't stress over it too much, because otherwise you're just going to be setting yourself up for failure. Make sure that you do a ton of preparation beforehand. If you're still feeling a lot of nerves right before you go up, try some breathing exercises. And then when you get up there, let the preparation that you've set aside help you. Don't focus too much on what you're doing right then and there at the moment, and just make sure that you're getting the message that you need to say out to people. And so that ends today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any other additional questions, feel free to leave some comments. If you want to hear me argue with myself, leave an idea for a topic, or check out any of the videos that are in the playlist that I've set aside of me arguing with myself. And I will see you all next time, and in the meantime, I hope that you have a good time.
Please listen carefully.